Siberia. The air doesn't move, it cracks. Every exhalation turns to frost before it touches the ground. The thermometer reads -67 degrees Celsius. Metal becomes as brittle as glass. Exposed skin freezes in less than 15 minutes. This is the sound of extreme cold. There is no wind to chase away, no snow to fall softly. There is only the dense silence of a world where movement itself resists existence. Welcome to Siberia, the most vast and merciless territory on the planet. 11 time zones, 13 million square kilometers, fewer than 40 million people scattered across a white void that seems endless. Here, winter is not a season, it is a sentence, one that lasts up to 9 months of the year. Put on your warmest clothes and join me on this journey to the empire of cold. Oymyakon. The name means water that does not freeze, a cruel irony in the coldest inhabited place on Earth. This small village of barely 500 people recorded a temperature of -67.7 degrees Celsius in 1933, but locals insist the real cold is even worse. Some elders speak of mornings where the temperature dropped below -70 degrees Celsius, numbers so extreme they almost lose meaning. In Oymyakon, survival is not a concept, it is a daily negotiation with nature. The Siberian cold doesn't just freeze, it imprisons. It transforms the landscape into a silent giant frozen in time. Rivers solidify to depths of 2 meters. Lakes become highways where 40-ton trucks pass without hesitation. Beneath everything lies the permafrost, a layer of permanently frozen ground that can extend more than 600 meters deep. The earth itself is frozen solid. During winter, daylight becomes a rare luxury. In some regions, the sun rises for only a few hours, casting a pale, angled light that brings no warmth, only the illusion of it. But the real story of Siberia is not the cold, it's the people who live inside it. Here, daily life obeys completely different rules. Cars are left running for days, sometimes weeks, because turning them off means they may never start again. Engine oil thickens like syrup, batteries die in minutes, rubber tires become so rigid they crack like glass. Even simple tasks become dangerous. Breathing too deeply can damage your lungs. Wearing glasses can cause them to freeze to your face, and if you touch metal with bare skin, it will stick instantly. Food behaves differently too. Fresh fish freezes solid in seconds, turning into something that can be sliced like wood. They eat it frozen, like sashimi, a dish born not from culture, but from necessity. There are no crops here, no agriculture. The ground never truly thaws, so people survive on meat, dairy, and stored food. Vegetables are rare, fruit is a luxury. Everything must endure the cold, or it simply disappears. And yet, life continues. Children walk to school in -50 degrees Celsius. Families gather. People laugh. Because in Siberia, the cold is not the enemy. It is simply reality. Houses are not built on the ground. They hover above it. Raised on wooden or concrete stilts, each structure stands slightly detached from the earth, not as an architectural choice, but as a matter of survival. Beneath them lies the permafrost, ground that has remained frozen for thousands of years. If a house is built directly on it, the heat from inside begins to melt the frozen soil, causing it to shift, sink, and destabilize. Slowly, the structure tilts, cracks, and eventually collapses under its own weight. Even water defies normal logic here. Underground pipes are impossible, as they would freeze solid within hours. Instead, they run above ground, wrapped in thick insulation, stretching across the landscape like metallic veins that connect each home, lifelines exposed to the elements. But the real question is not how structures survive, it's how people do. The Yakuts, the indigenous people of this region, have lived here for over 1,000 years, mastering an environment that seems uninhabitable. Their language reflects this intimacy with the cold, containing dozens of words to describe its many forms, not just temperature, but sensation, danger, and intensity. For them, cold is not a single experience, but a spectrum. Their culture is built on resilience, passed down through generations, not in theory, but in practice, in habits, instincts, and traditions shaped by extreme conditions. Their diet is a direct response to this reality. Fat is not a luxury, it is essential fuel. An adult male consumes between 4,000 and 5,000 calories a day just to maintain heat. One of their emblematic foods is stroganina, raw fish frozen solid, sliced into thin strips while still hard as ice, and eaten immediately. It requires no cooking, no preparation, just the cold itself preserving what sustains life. Animals, too, have adapted in extraordinary ways. Yakut horses survive temperatures that would kill most other breeds. They dig through snow with their hooves to reach grass buried beneath layers of ice, while their bodies develop thick winter coats and compact, resilient forms that conserve energy and heat. Reindeer are even more central to survival. They are not simply animals, but an entire system of life, providing transportation, food, clothing, and economic value. A herder measures wealth not in currency, but in the size of their herd, which can number in the hundreds or even thousands. These herds migrate across vast frozen distances, following ancient routes in search of lichens hidden beneath the snow. Even clothing reflects a deep understanding of the environment. Layers are carefully constructed, thermal garments to retain heat, wool for insulation, and reindeer hides worn with fur facing inward to trap warmth, followed by another outer layer with fur facing outward to block the cold. It is not fashion, it is survival engineering refined over centuries, proving that in Siberia, adaptation is not optional. It is the only way to exist. The boots are stuffed with dry, moisture-absorbing grass and changed every night to prevent freezing from within. Gloves come in double, sometimes triple layers. Faces are almost entirely covered, leaving only a narrow slit for the eyes. And even then, the cold finds its way in. It seeps through the smallest gaps. Fingers go numb first, then ears, then the nose. The process is silent, almost deceptive. Frostbite doesn't begin with pain, it begins with absence, a loss of sensation, and by the time the pain arrives, the damage may already be irreversible. Inside the houses, life clings desperately to warmth. Stoves burn without rest, day and night, fueled by coal or wood. The air is thick with heat and humidity, while outside everything remains frozen solid. Steam rises from cooking pots and clings to windows, forming layers of frost that blur the outside world. Families gather close to the fire, not out of comfort, but out of necessity. Heat here is not luxury, it is survival. Stepping outside is not a simple act, it is crossing into a hostile environment, like stepping onto another planet. And beyond the cold, there is something even heavier: isolation. Siberia is not only harsh, it is vast and empty. Villages are separated by hundreds of kilometers of forest, ice, and silence. The nearest neighbor might be days away, reachable only by sled or rugged all-terrain vehicles. Roads, when they exist, are unpredictable and dangerous, frozen solid in winter, then transforming into deep, impassable mud in spring, capable of swallowing entire trucks. Even Yakutsk, a city of 300,000 people, feels cut off from the rest of the world. There is no direct railway connecting it to the wider network. For much of the year, access depends on frozen routes, trucks crossing thick ice, or small aircraft navigating brutal weather conditions. In summer, when the Lena River finally thaws, it becomes a temporary lifeline, a moving corridor through an otherwise isolated land. But this isolation is not just physical, it seeps into the mind. During the long winter months, when darkness dominates and the sun barely appears, the psychological toll becomes undeniable. Seasonal depression takes hold, and for many, alcohol becomes an escape from a reality that is as unforgiving mentally as it is physically. The white silence of the outside world seeps into people's minds, filling them with a kind of emptiness that no stove, no matter how hot, can ever truly warm. Days pass in a muted stillness where sound is swallowed by snow and distance feels infinite. And yet, within that silence, something remarkable takes root. resilience, a quiet, almost invisible strength. People here learn patience not as a virtue, but as a necessity. Time stretches differently in Siberia. Winter feels endless, but it is never permanent. And that certainty, fragile but constant, is what keeps people grounded. Because when winter finally loosens its grip, it doesn't fade away gently, it breaks. Suddenly, violently, the land awakens. Snow recedes, rivers surge with meltwater, and the taiga forests erupt into deep, endless green. Life doesn't return gradually, it explodes. Insects hatch in unimaginable numbers. Mosquitoes rise in dense clouds so thick they can darken the sky, forcing humans and animals alike to adapt once again. Temperatures soar to 30 degrees Celsius, creating a surreal contrast to the -60 of winter. The same land that once froze everything now pulses with heat, noise, and movement. This extreme duality defines Siberia. Life here is not linear, not stable, not predictable. It is a relentless cycle of extremes, of freezing and thawing, of silence and overwhelming activity, of death and sudden rebirth. Survival depends on understanding this rhythm, on enduring one phase while preparing for the next. There is no balance, only contrast. Beneath this volatile surface lies another layer of reality, one that explains why humans continue to endure such conditions. Siberia is not just vast, it is rich beyond measure. Hidden under its frozen crust are some of the largest reserves of natural resources on the planet. Natural gas, oil, gold, diamonds, coal, nickel. Entire economies depend on what lies buried here. The ground may be frozen, but beneath it, industry never sleeps. Massive operations drill through permafrost, carving into the earth to extract its hidden wealth, transforming one of the most inhospitable places on Earth into a cornerstone of global supply. But this extraction comes at a cost. Cities like Norilsk exist as monuments to that trade-off. Built in isolation, sustained by industry, and surrounded by one of the harshest climates on Earth, Norilsk is a place of stark contradictions. Around 180,000 people live there, in a city where the soil is so contaminated that almost nothing can grow. The air carries the constant weight of sulfur and heavy metals. Snow does not fall clean. It often lands already tainted by pollution. The environment itself feels exhausted. Winters push temperatures below -50 degrees Celsius, freezing everything into stillness, while darkness dominates for months at a time. The absence of sunlight is not just physical, it becomes psychological, distorting perception, draining energy, blurring the passage of time. And then, in summer, the opposite extreme takes over. For weeks, the sun refuses to set, flooding the city with an endless, disorienting daylight that makes sleep feel unnatural. People come here chasing opportunity. Salaries are high, far above the national average, a powerful incentive to endure the conditions. But many discover quickly that money cannot compensate for isolation, for the environmental stress, for the mental weight of living at the edge of human tolerance. Some stay for years, few stay forever. Norilsk is also cut off in a way that feels almost unreal in the modern world. There are no roads connecting it to the rest of the country, no highways stretching outward. Access is limited to boats during the brief summer thaw and planes that must navigate some of the harshest weather conditions on Earth year-round. The city is not just remote, it is enclosed, almost self-contained. And that is the deeper truth of Siberia. It is a land of extremes, where nature dictates every rule, and humanity adapts not by conquering it, but by enduring it. A place where silence can feel heavier than noise, where warmth is temporary, and where survival itself becomes a daily achievement. This is the cruel irony of Siberia, a place too hostile to truly belong to us, yet too valuable for us to ever leave. It is immensely rich and desperately inhospitable at the same time. If you haven't frozen this far, then you've already survived half of Siberia. Leave a like before the button turns to ice. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. But something is changing. The permafrost, which has remained frozen for millennia, is beginning to thaw, not uniformly, but in patches. Giant craters open up on Earth when methane trapped under the ice explodes upon release. Buildings that have remained stable for decades begin to tilt. In the last 30 years, the average temperature in Siberia has risen 3 degrees Celsius. It may seem like little, but in an ecosystem where the balance is so delicate, 3 degrees is a revolution. The Yakut elders say that winter is no longer what it used to be, that the frosts arrive later, that the river ice is thinner, that the animals behave strangely, confused by weather signals that no longer follow ancestral patterns. Climate change is not an abstraction in Siberia. It is a crack widening beneath the feet of those who have lived here for centuries. Siberia does not forgive. It never has. It is a place that forces human beings to confront their fragility in the most direct way possible. Here there is no room for error, no romanticism in survival. There is only the relentless cold and the will of those who choose to endure it. But perhaps in that endurance there is something profoundly revealing. Because living in Siberia is not just about surviving the cold, it is about demonstrating that human beings can adapt to almost anything, that life, however fragile it may seem, finds ways to persist even in the most hostile corners of the planet. The Yakuts have a proverb: cold doesn't kill, unpreparedness kills. Perhaps that is the simplest and most complex lesson of Siberia, that it's not about taming nature. It's about learning to live with it, to respect it, to recognize that we are small in face of forces that existed long before us and will continue to exist long after us. The sun touches the horizon, the temperature drops even further. Another day ends in the coldest place on Earth. And tomorrow, as always, someone will wake up here, light the stove, put on layers of fur, and go out to face the cold once more. Because that is what you do in Siberia. You survive.